j'ai du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Let's bring in our lead fact checker here at CNN, Daniel Dale. Daniel, Republicans certainly kept you busy over the last 2.5 hours.
Jake, that was a parade of dishonesty. We had false claims, we had misleading claims, we had major strategic omissions, we had up is down revisionist history on the coronavirus and other matters. I think it veered at times into the realm of disinformation, even more than mere dishonesty. And Jake, people say, as you know, they all lie. What about the Democrats? Look, I sat here in the same spot listening closely to the Democratic convention. It just was not like this. I think it's important for us to note when things are not equal, and their 4 nights combined didn't have the quantity of dishonesty of tonight's one Republican night. We need to say when this isn't the same and this isn't the same.
That's right. I mean, you pointed out the times that misstatements or lies were made at the Democratic convention. You're saying they're just a lot more at the Republican convention. Give us some examples of what you saw tonight that needs to be fact-checked, and we understand this is just a small sampling.
This is a sampling. So we had Donald Trump Jr. suggest that Joe Biden described riots as, quote, peaceful protests. In fact, Biden explicitly condemned protest violence and looting. We had Nikki Haley describing Trump, the president, as an opponent of so-called cancel culture. The president has railed against so-called cancel culture, but he's also tried to get dozens of people, entities, companies canceled, including Goodyear just last week, and Macy's and Mexico, and a bunch of other entities in the past. A video had the president claiming that he kept every single promise he made. He certainly kept some, but not even close to all of them. Mexico hasn't paid for the wall. Obamacare isn't repealed. We haven't had 4% economic growth per year. That's just wrong. We had multiple speakers, from Congressman Steve Scalise and Jim Jordan, tout economic records that have been obliterated by the pandemic. They cited the lowest unemployment rate in 50 years. Well, we don't have that anymore. We're now at 10.2%, higher than at any time since the Great Recession. We heard a number of accusations about Joe Biden that just aren't true, that he wants to dismantle, defund the police. He's explicitly, repeatedly rejected that idea, that he wants to, quote, abolish the suburbs. This is just nonsense about an anti-segregation rule, that he wants open borders. He certainly wants a loosening of immigration policy, but not completely unrestricted migration. We heard extreme hyperbole. One speaker, Natalie Harp, said that we'd, quote, be lucky if we could see any doctor at all under Joe Biden's healthcare plan. That's just ludicrous. And in what, Jake, I think the biggest revisionist history was the suggestion that Trump, unlike various Democrats, did not downplay the coronavirus pandemic. He's the one who said we'd go from 15 cases to close to 0. He's the one who suggested it would go away with warm weather in April. He's the one who said into March that it was under control. So the suggestion that Democrats were wrong and Trump was right is just unmoored from reality, Jake.
Daniel Dale, first, defend yourself. The charge is you didn't fact-check the Democrats. Why are you fact-checking the Republicans?
I did fact-check the Democrats. I was right here in this very studio watching very closely. I filed a piece on the first 2 nights of the DNC. My colleagues filed a piece on the second 2 nights. But I wasn't on TV, Chris, because the material didn't warrant it. There were a few items where they missed context, maybe that were a bit misleading, but there was not a parade of false claims like we had tonight. This one night of the RNC featured more dishonesty than the entire 4 nights of the DNC. So I think as journalists, we need to say when things are not equal, and frankly, they were not equal here.
What are your big 3?
Big 3 lies from tonight?
Yeah.
Well, I think the biggest thing was the suggestion that, There was a suggestion that Trump is doing well on coronavirus, but also the suggestion that he, unlike Democrats, did not play down the pandemic. Trump played it down for months. He's arguably still playing it down, but he said into March, this was going away. It was under control. It was like a flu, etc. There was extreme hyperbole about Biden, inaccurate hyperbole, that he wants to abolish the suburbs, dismantle, defund the police, even that you will not be able to see any doctor under Joe Biden's healthcare plan. And I'd say the third thing, Chris, is the attempt by some speakers to pretend that the pandemic never happened and never affected the economy. So they'd say things like lowest unemployment rate in 50 years. Well, that was true under Trump at one point, but it's not even close to true anymore. Those records have been obliterated by the pandemic. We're at 10.2% unemployment. So you can tout the record and then say, well, we had some tough times. It's no longer true. But they didn't say that last part.
Mike Shields, how'd you feel about your party?
Good evening. Look, I thought it was a fantastic first night. It was a smashing success. Logistically, it came across well. The diversity of it was incredible. The messaging was incredible. You had real Americans, not Hollywood stars. You had real people, business owners, people who are nurses, people that are in the White House that are heroes. I thought the president was really speaking to the voters that helped him win in 2016, a group of voters that the Democratic convention really didn't speak to last week, and it was a huge contrast with what we saw last week.
Toulouse was interesting. They had the president in a clip there with essential workers. One of the problems for minority communities is that they are disproportionately essential workers, which is one of the reasons they're getting more sick. They didn't have a diversity basis around the president tonight. How did that play for you?
Well, clearly the president was trying to show that he can stand toe-to-toe with Joe Biden. We saw last week all of the various speakers say Joe Biden is a decent man, that he's empathetic, that he reaches out to people. You saw the president trying to show that side of him to the extent that it exists, especially since, the vast majority of Americans have an unfavorable view of the president. They don't think he's honest and trustworthy. They don't think he cares about people like them. They don't think he's an empathetic person. So he tried to play that up, and he tried to also showcase some of the diversity within the Republican Party, which is, as a whole, lacking in diversity, especially when you compare it to the Democratic Party. But they took some various candidates for congressional office, some state lawmakers from Georgia, and tried to show that the Republican Party is willing to showcase its diverse voices. It's a sign that President Trump wants to try to compete for some minority voters, but he also wants to compete for a lot of the suburban voters who are, sort of dismayed with the sort of blatant racial offensive-ness of this presidency, and they're trying to show that, the president who's, said both people on both sides in Charlottesville were very fine, and the president who told certain Congress members to go back to their country is not a racist. That was sort of the goal of today.
Well, the bigger discussion that they're going to have in this convention and with the country is that, boy, if Biden gets in there, things are going to get scary. And the face of that was the McCloskeys, who, of course, came to America's attention when people broke in down the street on their block, and they came out with weapons. I had Mr. McCloskey on the show with his lawyer right after it happened. Here's a piece of the sound from them at the convention tonight.
What you saw happen to us could just as easily happen to any of you who are watching from quiet neighborhoods around our country. And that's what we want to speak to you about tonight.
That's exactly right. Whether it's the defunding of police, ending cash bail so criminals can be released back out on the streets the same day to riot again, or encouraging anarchy and chaos on our streets, it seems as if the Democrats no longer view the government's job as protecting honest citizens from criminals, but rather protecting criminals from honest citizens. Not a single person in the out-of-control mob you saw at our house was charged with a crime. But you know who was? We were.
Now, I got to say, Mike, when I had him on the show, the whole kerfuffle came up that he and I were supposedly fighting about his. That was BS. I asked him how he felt about Trump making him the face of white resistance to Black Lives Matter, because that's what happened when Trump put the video out there. That's just a matter of fact. And at the time, he was so resistant. Now he's at the convention being exactly that.
It is Tuesday, the 25th of August of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. A small scant dash, a mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. I picked up from the local, well, I guess we would just call it a general store of sorts, because they sell guns, drugs, and other merchandise, and it's even known as Rogue River Guns and Drugs. Wow! Anyway, I picked up some Hawaiian smoked sea salt, and that is a great condiment, though used very little. They don't put any liquid smoke in it, so that's good, because, I don't know, it's to me it tastes plastic anyway, icky. So it's really smoked, and very good, but used very little. The smoky properties can be overwhelming if you use too much, let alone the salt aspect. But that's a nice addition to my pantry, indeed. Well, speaking of additions to our pantry, I think I've got some crazy cakes in there now. Kimberly the Guilfoyle. Where did I come up with that? I don't know. Anyway, 6 minutes of hell that we will never get back in our lives, ever. I couldn't watch the whole thing of Kimberly, and that was just on tape. I gave up when Rona changed her name. Yeah, she's a Romney, but she can't call herself a Romney because it makes Donnie so mad. And apparently he forgets she's a McDaniel, and that's all Donnie needs to know. Oh, yeah, we got rid of the Romney girl. We hired a McDaniel. Okay. Anyway, I had to give up when she was giving her little spiel about Trump being a dedicated family man. Oh, I had to turn it off right there. And I was wondering, did Daniel Dale fact check that? I don't think he did at the top. It was some others of much more import. Anyway, the family man. And I love how they want to paint Joe Biden, the widower, whose second wife came and really, Jill helped heal that family. They're making Joe out to be a rapist. In fact, I've got people in my timeline saying, well, of course we don't have any evidence, but we just know Joe Biden is a rapist. Really? I don't know why this is. Are people just that upset that Bernie is a cop and endorsed Kamala, I'm sorry, and Joe? Is that what it is? Is that what it is? Because I don't understand how anybody on our side would float these propaganda lies. I know that's redundant, but hey, it's still in the morning. So Joe is supposed to be this craven libertine, and his only surviving son is some sort of corrupt individual all out for himself, using the family name to get to places that he's not qualified for, which is an absolute lie in every aspect. Hunter is actually quite accomplished. I believe does he teach at Georgetown right now? I know he's a university professor. I believe it's Georgetown or American University. And he sat on many boards before he sat on Burisma. And yes, when you've kicked out your corrupt individuals in your company, I think maybe you want to get people who are not corrupt. And Joe Biden's son, Hunter, was one of those. One. And what was the terrible thing that Joe did in terms of this collusion with the foreign government? He was out there furthering the policy of NATO and the United States. The stated policy of NATO and the United States, who was a part of NATO, by the way. But in Donald Trump's world, NATO is the enemy. We Democrats are the enemy. And Vladimir Putin is someone that you never question and you always praise. Speaking never question and always praise, I was taken to task. This is totally changing the subject. It's sort of like an ancillary to the discussion, but I have to put it in. I was taken to task when Kim Jong-un, before the turn of the year, had taken ill, and we started seeing more of his sister. And I just said, it sounds to me like they're grooming the sister to take over, and people said, no, don't know anything about Korean culture. There's so macho, they would never allow a woman to take it. Okay, I don't know. I think a cult is a cult. And family in the cult that leads the cult is the family they're going to, follow and be cult-like no matter the gender. And people were just upset with me. I couldn't understand why. Well, it looks like the sister's taken over because apparently Kim Jong-un is in a coma. Now, of course, I thought he was in a coma for quite a while, but, it's just me. So it looks like the cult of personality continues. And now it's with the sister. Yeah, she's going to be taken over. And I know she's going to be called a dragon lady and all this other stuff. Don't do that. Racist misogyny. So the RNC is just obviously full of dishonesty. A parade of dishonesty, as Daniel Dale mentioned it. And thank you, Daniel, for doing that. Like I said, I just could not watch it. I had MSNBC on for a little bit, and I just couldn't. I turned over to the repeat of DeJoy's testimony in front of the House Oversight Committee. I watched the whole thing over again. I just could not stand watching the RNC. So, we pick it up, in other ways. We, get the flavor of it. Sort of how I used to study back in the day. We would have these assignments in our textbook, and I'd read all the rest of the book, and then I'd finally get to the assignment. So I don't know. It's just me. I mean, I handed the assignment in on time, but they said read this part of the book. I'm reading the whole book. I don't care. So I'd read up to the section, and then after the section, and then read the section, and then I'd find out, oh, this is what happened then. Okay, worked for me. So I have been getting the smorgasbord part of the RNC, and we got 3 more days left of it. Oh, my God. What I really loved is the assessment from the Republican aides that have been making the rounds. Oh, yes, as opposed to the DNC, the Democratic Convention, they were just all about hate. They were all about darkness. They didn't even have Joe Biden the first night. They didn't have real, they had actors, not real people. They had John Voight open up their convention, but that's neither here nor there. So I have to say that's totally at odds with how everybody else in America saw the Democratic National Convention. It was America the Beautiful in full color. And you go and watch the RNC, and it's American Carnage. And boy, is it white hot. White hot. But the aides came and onto the different shows and said, oh, yeah, the Democratic National Convention was so negative, so dark. Do you mean dark in terms of the hue of skin color? Yes, that is what they mean. Oh, and let's put the lie to the McCloskeys' property being broken into. They being the mob, tore down a gate on their property. That was a gated community. It's a common area, and there's a pass-through through there. And the protesters, well, okay, let's be clear. The gate was locked, probably by the McCloskeys because they're dicks. The Homeowners Association in that gated community has been at odds with that couple for a couple of decades now. The Jewish synagogue that's not even in the gated community. It's outside. Put some beehives up around the synagogue so that they could make honey for Rosh Hashanah, and the McCloskeys came over and hacked them down with hatchets and baseball bats. Oh, and a sledgehammer too, just to be clear, I guess. These people are a scourge. They're the prime example. They're absolutely emblematic of the white-hot rage on display at the RNC, and that's why they were asked to go there. In fact, they probably asked if they could. Who cares? The fact is that these people are the face of white supremacy, entitlement. And yeah, if we don't stop it now, they say, your neighborhood is going to look like that. In full color. Oh, my God. All right. All I know is back in the day, as the world advanced, everybody wanted a color TV. You just didn't want black and white anymore. In fact, they're taking great black and white movies, and there were some, and they're colorizing them. And you know what? They're actually pretty damn good. You can still get a little bit of the, film noir effect, even with the color. Isn't that something? I think we need more color in our lives, and we need less white, hot rage. Much less. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? An ex-Miami lawmaker under federal investigation for a $50 million lobbying contract with horrors. Venezuela's socialist government, a GOPer? Well, he was just elected to the Miami GOP Executive Committee. I thought Venezuela was Goldstein. Wow. After pushing hard to reopen schools during a pandemic, GOP Congressman Doug Collins is now selling back-to-school masks at $15 a pop, plus shipping and handling. And armed maskless spectators push their way past state police at the Idaho State House, breaking glass and disrupting special session COVID hearings. No federal paramilitaries were called, and no arrests were made. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Tunisia's prime minister-designate announced a cabinet of independent technocrats without parties, so he can avoid all that weird strife and try to get their government working again. Isn't that funny? And German Chancellor Angela Merkel told Russia to investigate the poisoning of Alexei Navalny after doctors found indications of a toxic substance in his body. I guess they didn't delay his transport to Berlin long enough, apparently, eh? Apparently. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Go to the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link, and our chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly, for everything that you do. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will hopefully notice our Patreon link, and if you link onto that, that will take you to our Patreon page, in which you would hopefully maybe consider becoming a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. A recurring pledge allows us to fulfill our civic duty, which is 24/7, 365 Resistance Radio. That is our civic duty, plus more. I mean, we got to get out to vote and all of that. But your recurring pledge, how about the cost of an espresso-type coffee drink? If you could afford that even in these times of peril, and send those funds our way, we stretch those dollars beyond compare, even on the quantum level. It's been proven. It's been measured. And we pay those bills, fly under the radar, and continue as we have been. And this is more than a duty. It's way more than a vocation. So thank you to those who have been recurring Patreons of Netroots Radio over these many years. You know, we've been doing this for almost 10 years. Almost 10 years. Wow. 24/7, 365. And thank you to those of you who are considering becoming a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. We need you. You know, the bills keep going up, and machinery continues to need to be replaced. Wow, man. When I was a kid, we were trying to get rid of planned obsolescence. Now it's a marketing and a manufacturing strategy again. Darn it. Okay, if you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that, and thank you, Tom, for that and everything else that you do. You can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, and I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime, and then get that out on social media. And the show notes and links diary is very important to this multimedia operation. That's where the actual articles are, so you can see where I've gone off. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so at Cookbook West. And please pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Oh, I might mention, if you want a little respite from, you know, just the drudgery of all this voluminous information and just the constant news cycle, I do have the Justice Department Music Sans Frontières on podcast, so go to Spreaker and check it out. An hour of, right now we are, I will admit, doing pandemic and civil unrest podcasts and broadcasts on Sunday nights. If you would like to listen to it on Sunday nights, it starts at 8 p.m. on the West Coast. That would be 11 p.m. on the East. But do pick up podcasts off of Spreaker, and you know, maybe that'll take your mind off of all of the turmoil that we have to exist under now. Alrighty, let's dive into this first. Oh, yeah, pick up podcasts. Let's dive into this first offering here while Gunner, the snoozing sous chef, is snoozing rather loudly again. He was up chasing, I believe, a cat out of the yard last night, very late. And now he's snoozing pretty loud. This first offering comes out of the Associated Press by Joshua Goodman. Democrats are sharpening attacks on a former congressman who was quietly elected to the Miami GOP's executive committee, despite a federal investigation into a $50 million lobbying contract with a favorite Republican target in South Florida, Venezuela's socialist government. David Rivera's election to the 160-member committee, which has not been previously reported, was largely overlooked amid the results of Miami's August 18th primaries. Rivera, who lost his re-election attempt in 2012 but retained strong name recognition, won 35% of the ballots cast by Republicans in the 23rd District of Miami-Dade County. 35%! And he won. Wow. Democrats are hopeful the scandal-plagued politician's comeback attempt could undermine what they see as red baiting by the Trump campaign, which compares Democratic nominee Joe Biden's policies to those of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. You know, Goldstein. The Trump campaign frequently touts Donnie's record for confronting the embattled socialist, a stance popular with Cuban and Venezuelan exiles who hold major sway in a battleground state. Trump must win to remain in the White House. Make no mistake, by electing David Rivera into its leadership, the Republican Party has shown that it is the party of Maduro, said Steve Simonidis, the Democratic chair in Miami-Dade. Kevin Munoz, a spokesman for the Biden campaign in Florida, said the GOP is making a mockery of the fight for democracy and freedom for Venezuela, and their words are nothing more than a calculated, cynical, and empty political ploy to score votes in Florida. In May, Florida Democrats called for a congressional investigation into Rivera's business dealing with Venezuela's state-owned oil monopoly PDVSA after a lawsuit revealed that his consulting firm had been awarded a 3-month, $50 million consulting contract in 2017 to improve PDVSA's long-term reputation among targeted stakeholders in the United States. Federal prosecutors in Miami are investigating the contract because Rivera never registered as an agent of a foreign government. The contract came as a shock to Miami residents who identify Rivera with the anti-communist policies of Senator Marco Rubio, with whom he shared a house when both were in the Florida state legislature. Josh Israel of the American Independent brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. After pushing hard to reopen schools during a pandemic, Representative Doug Collins, a repug from Georgia, is now attempting to raise money for his Senate bid by selling face masks as back-to-school items you can't live without. For $15 plus shipping, supporters can purchase a blue mask emblazoned with the campaign logo. Stay safe and support your favorite conservative with his Collins for Senate face masks. That's rather wordy. Georgia has been among the nation's worst states for coronavirus cases and recently was identified as the state in which residents are most likely to contract COVID-19, according to assessments out of Harvard and Georgia Tech. There are some clear steps that we need to take to improve our status, public health expert Dr. Harry Hyman of Georgia State University said, and at this point we are not taking them. Collins, like many GOP lawmakers, has vocally pushed for schools to reopen with in-person instruction, despite experts warning about such steps worsening the pandemic. But of course, if you can't capitalize on a tragedy, what kind of prosperity gospel cretin are you? Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Angry, maskless spectators forced themselves into the Idaho House special session on the coronavirus pandemic yesterday, Monday, shattering a glass door, rushing into the gallery that had limited seating because of the virus, and forcing lawmakers to ask for calm in a crowd that included a man carrying a loaded assault-style weapon. After some people shoved their way past Idaho State Police, Republican House Speaker Scott Bedke allowed the gallery to fully open, as long as the crowd stopped chanting and was respectful. I don't know, pushing past the cops and breaking windows is respectful? Well, they didn't call in the paramilitaries. No arrests were made. I wonder why. I always want to try to avoid violence, he told the AP later. My initial reaction, of course, was to clear the fourth floor, but we had room for at least some more. He said he was more disappointed than surprised at the violence. I think we're better than that. I think that Idahoans expect more out of their citizens. Several conservative lawmakers asked for calm and decorum from the gallery crowd. That included a man with a fully loaded assault-style weapon, and the session started with a full gallery and few masks. That carried over into packed committee rooms where maskless spectators ignored social distancing. One Democratic representative walked out of a committee meeting citing unsafe conditions. The session, called by Republican Governor Brad Little, is looking at ways to smooth voting in November, including dealing with extra absentee ballots and a potential shortage of polling places and workers amid the virus. Lawmakers are also considering changes to liability laws they say are needed to protect businesses, schools, and government agencies from lawsuits by people who get COVID-19. Well, that's forward-thinking now, isn't it? Lawmakers made progress on about a dozen bills advancing, then the Senate, by a 31-4 vote, approved creating centers where residents from different precincts can vote. But, of course, let's be clear. These are conservative lawmakers running a conservative state house, and their state house was overrun by right-wing conservatives upset that they might have to follow some rules during a pandemic. Well, that's Idaho for you. Let's get to our break. And when we get back from our break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You're listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Karen Kwan. That's a bird called the hermit warbler. It breeds along the U.S. West Coast.
They all kind of look the same. They have a cute little yellow head and a gray body.
Brett Furness, a biostatistician at the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Typically, birds sing the same one song within one region because the song attracts mates, and different regions can have slightly different dialects of the song.
But what we also noticed that there are some places that were exceptions to this rule, that some places there was more than one song in the same place. And so we were curious why that would be the case.
To investigate, Furness and his team recorded hermit warbler songs, lots of them.
We had to go all over California. So we went to 100 different locations throughout the state and all the different potential habitats of this species.
The researchers analyzed all the hermit warbler songs they collected and discovered that the hermit warbler doesn't just violate the usual one song per region rule. They positively demolish it.
Doing this over a period of 10 years, we found actually an amazing 35 different dialects across the state.
Here are just two examples of dialects. Slow down for easier comparison. But why would the bird repeatedly alter its song when any changes could affect its ability to attract a mate? The answer is wildfire.
And basically, the idea is that hermit warblers are very sensitive to fire in the short term, and so they will abandon an area temporarily, even if it's just an understory or a low-severity fire that doesn't destroy the whole stand. And so this creates a vacuum, and then other hermit warblers singing rival dialects move into this vacuum, and then you end up maybe a few years later with two or more different dialects in the same place.
The study was published in the journal The Auk, Ornithological Advances. Even though the California hermit warblers sing multiple songs, Furness says that such musical diversity might actually work in the hermit warbler's favor.
They may have greater resiliency to things like that are stressors, to our natural habitats like climate change. And so understanding that helps us to make better conservation decisions to protect biodiversity. But it's also what makes the outdoors interesting and a beautiful place to be, because you can go to one part of the state and hear hermit warblers singing a certain way, and you can go to another part of the state and they sing a different way. And even though you might not know it's a hermit warbler, your experience outdoors is enriched by that diversity.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Karen Kwan.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Gosh, our trasher-in-chief has really been busy lately, calling Kamala Harris nasty and calling our post offices a joke. But instead of trash-talking, shouldn't a president be, running the government? Nah, that bores him. Besides, that's why he packed his cabinet with all those corporate lobbyists who are skilled at trying to rig our government to serve moneyed elites. Now, empowered by Trump, these special interests are our government, literally setting and running America's economic, environmental, health, and other public policies. And what a job they're doing. On us. Check out Andrew Wheeler, head of Trump's EPA. He had been the top lobbyist for a coal mining giant, constantly fighting environmental rules to make this notoriously foul industry clean up its act. Now, the befouler's lobbyist is making the rules, allowing big coal and other fossil fuel giants to pour more toxic contaminants into our air and water. Wheeler wails that his poor multi-billion-dollar former clients must be freed from burdensome requirements to limit the damage they do to the health of America's people and our planet. Burdensome? His latest edict frees oil and gas corporations from having to fix methane leaks in their wells, pipelines, etc. Fixing leaks is burdensome? Hello, if you had a gas leak at your house, would you not want to burden the company to come fix it? Not only is methane a potent greenhouse gas causing climate change, but Wheeler's don't worry about it favor to his industry buddies comes just as scientists have discovered that methane leaks are 2 to 3 times worse than his EPA has been reporting. This means the industry is driving us toward a climate crisis faster than anyone realized. This is Jim Hightower saying, talk about nasty. The Trumpeteers have turned government totally bass-ackwards, protecting polluters instead of people.
If you'd like more of Jim Hightower's real populism, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter gives you the real lowdown on which corporations, by name, are doing what to the middle class, our environment, and our democracy. Each month, the Hightower Lowdown brings you facts you didn't know, along with actions you can take to fight back. It also comes with a sense of humor. Hightower believes we can fight the gods and still have fun. Plus, get this, it's cheap. Only $15 brings you 12 issues a year. For real populism, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1619. That was the day that the first ship bearing enslaved people arrived in North America. It was an English warship called the White Lion that came to Johnstown in the colony of Virginia. The ship was a privateer and had captured 20-odd enslaved people from a Portuguese ship in a raid. Virginian planters were interested in forced labor to work the tobacco fields in the colony. The laws surrounding slavery in Virginia evolved over time. Throughout the 1600s, statutes replacing indentured servants to race-based slavery for life were written into the law books. In 1654, John Kaiser became the first person enslaved under the rule of law in North America. By 1662, a law was passed that children would be considered enslaved or free based on the status of their mother in Virginia. This meant that slavery could pass down from generation to generation. This and similar laws ensured slavery would grow. Historians estimate that 388,000 enslaved people came to what became the United States from Africa. Due to laws passing down slavery to children, by the Civil War, there were nearly 4 million enslaved people in the South. By the early 1800s, enslaved people made up about 1/3 of the Southern population. Initially, enslaved labor worked predominantly to produce crops like tobacco, indigo, and also rice. Some West Africans had developed valuable skills in rice cultivation that white landowners exploited through slavery. With the invention of the cotton gin in 1793, cotton became increasingly important to the Southern economy. The South's dependence on slave labor became more entrenched and spread westward with the growing United States until the Civil War ended the brutality of slavery.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Night 1 of the 2020 Republican National Convention is in the history books. Fact checkers were very busy Monday night, pretty much all of them noting that it began with a parade of dishonesty, presenting a misleading portrait of Donald Trump's presidency. Anderson Cooper gets us started on CNN.
You've been listening to the president speak at the Republican convention moments after being formally nominated for president by the party. After vowing to have a positive convention, the president goes negative in its first moments. He started off falsely attacking mail-in voting. He's continuing to attack mail-in voting, and as his Postmaster General testifies that the attacks are, quote, unhelpful. He also criticized the media for airing the Postmaster's hearing instead of his roll call. He falsely accused Democrats of wanting to shut down the country to hurt the economy and somehow help them at the ballot box. Unclear how angering the entire country by shutting down would help them in the ballot box.
So CNN immediately refuted some of Trump's lies in his first of what they tell us will be many appearances throughout the 4-day exercise. MSNBC also jumped in immediately with fact checks, too.
And so the president has kicked off his unconventional convention, and we have to kick off with a massive fact check. So, zero evidence, obviously, that the election is being rigged. Democrats trying to steal the election with universal mail-in voting, so the president claims. The Obama did not appoint judges because he thought Clinton would win. That is not true. If you will recall, there's been a Republican Senate since 2014. Mitch McConnell made that his goal for the last year to keep President Obama from filling those judicial appointments. And then, of course, he made this claim about the Republican Party strongly supporting pre-existing conditions when there is actual and active lawsuits supported by the President's Justice Department to get rid of the ACA, which would get rid of the law that would force insurance companies to cover pre-existing conditions. It's going to be a long week for fact checkers.
The theme seemed to be socialist doom and rampant violence if Trump were not reelected. Many viewers were confused, though, as the president and his campaign advisors promised a positive, more optimistic convention than what they claimed the Democrats staged last week. Night 1 featured speeches from former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley and Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, the only black Republican member of Congress of either house. And pre-recorded frightening diatribes from Donald Trump Jr. and his girlfriend, Kimberly Guilfoyle.
Joe Biden and the radical left are now coming for our freedom of speech. They want to bully us into submission. If they get their way, it will no longer be the silent majority. It will be the silenced majority.
America, it's all on the line. President Trump believes in you. He emancipates and lifts you up to live your American dream. You are capable. You are qualified. You are powerful, and you have the ability to choose your life and determine your destiny. Don't let the Democrats take you for granted. Don't let them step on you. Don't let them destroy your families, your lives, and your future. Don't let them kill future generations because they told you and brainwashed you and fed you lies that you weren't good enough.
Whoa. On Twitter Monday morning, both Guilfoyle and Donald Trump Jr. are trending, along with hashtag cocaine convention and hashtag Guilfoyle challenge. I'll just leave those there. On Tuesday night, we get to see speeches from Eric Trump and Tiffany Trump, as well as First Lady Melania Trump. Protesters in Kenosha, Wisconsin took to the streets to vent their anger over the shooting of Jacob Blake by police. Blake, a 29-year-old black father, was shot in the back 7 times by an officer on Sunday as he tried to enter his car. His 3 young children were sitting in the back seat witnessing the shooting. Blake was still reportedly in intensive care late Monday. 2 Wisconsin police officers have been put on administrative leave as authorities investigate. The shooting comes as protesters continue to speak out against police violence on U.S. streets after the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. Well, the Postmaster General of the United States, a man named Louis DeJoy, told members of the House Oversight Committee on Monday that those cost-cutting changes blamed for delivery delays would not cause mail-in ballots to go uncounted in November, when up to half of the voters are expected to vote by mail due to the coronavirus. DeJoy said that he has halted the changes until after the election, but that he would resume some of the measures after voting is done. DeJoy also defended his leadership, saying that he would resume a push to improve on-time deliveries. But when asked if he would restore both the collection boxes and the high-speed sorting machines that have been removed from post offices around the country, he said no.
Will you put the high-speed machines back?
No, I will not.
You will not?
Will not.
You will not. Well, there you go.
There I go. What? Those machines,
Madam Chair, let the witness answer the question, and he has gone over time.
Order. The gentleman may answer the question without being interrupted.
Every
the question is, will you put the machines back?
The answer is no.
And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com, and please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 61 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high in the mid to low 90s. Looks like, well, we've had a few rain showers this morning with light rain continuing right now, and we'll have mostly sunny conditions during the afternoon hours. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10. Mostly clear tonight with a stray shower or thunderstorm possible. We want the showers to put out any fires started by the lightning, of course. Lows in the upper 50s, low 60s with winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10. Looking for a high of around 90 tomorrow with sunny skies. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County here in southern Oregon have increased from 658 to 713. And we have 2 dead confirmed on undercount. And this county has now been put on a watch by the state because of our precipitous increase in coronavirus cases, which some of us look, we had more level heads and we warned them that this would happen. And what happened to us? Well, we got banned from the local Facebook groups for telling people the truth. And now here we are. Grass pollen right outside the window here at the mothership is rated low. The air quality index is good at 38 parts per million, though we are under an active air advisory because of forest fires being blown, or the smoke from forest fires being blown into the region. The daytime UV index is high at 7. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 29.91 inches. Visibility is up to 9 miles. And relative humidity is at 82%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. London is 69 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 83 and fair. Rome is 90 and sunny. Kyiv is 76 degrees and fair. Kabul is 80 and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong is 82 and fair. Tokyo is 80 degrees and clear. Sydney, Australia is 50 and clear. San Francisco, California is 58 and cloudy. And New York is 85 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Tarek Amara of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Tunisia's Prime Minister-designate Haitham Metachi announced yesterday, Monday, a cabinet of independent technocrats without parties seeking to distance the government from political conflicts and focus on reviving the ailing economy. Under plans to revamp the government and revive the economy, Machichi gathered the ministers of finance, investment, and economy into a single department, led by liberal economist Ali Kouli, CEO of Arab Banking Corporation in Tunisia. He needs to win a confidence vote in Parliament in the next few days, or face the dissolution of Parliament by the President and another election, deepening instability.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Michael Nienaber and Joseph Nazar of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. German Chancellor Angela Merkel called on Russia, meaning Vlad, to investigate the suspected poisoning of Russian opposition figure Alexei Navalny and hold the perpetrators accountable after doctors found indications of a toxic substance in his body. A critic of Russian President Vladimir Putin, Navalny last week collapsed on a plane after drinking tea while on his way to a campaign in Siberia. He was flown to Germany for treatment on Saturday. The Kremlin said it was unclear what caused Navalny to fall ill, and that initial test did not show he was poisoned as his aides charged, but German doctors treating Navalny at a Berlin hospital said that medical examinations indicated poisoning with some kind of cholinesterase inhibitor, although the specific substance is not yet known. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we'll meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.